Well, let's just get going.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you
So,
want me to just talk a little bit about the sort of history of it?
yeah, I think I'll have you introduce yourself first since people don't know. So,
Okay.
hey everyone.
Yeah,
This is
yeah. Hey, everyone.
hey.
My name is Jonas Downey, and I'm the designer behind the app Hello Weather, which is my side project. My day job is to be a product designer at Basecamp.
That's
I've been doing
awesome.
that for about 7 years.
Awesome. Yeah, wow. Man, that's great.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Um yeah, and I don't know how long ago Hello Weather came out. 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, we started working on it. It's been a long time. We started working on it in 2014, but we didn't actually release it until 2016. It took
Okay.
us a long time to kind of ramp up.
Yeah. I mean, you all
So yeah, it's been 3 years. Yeah.
most of the team is at base camp or is or
No,
was?
so originally I started it with my friend Trevor, and we were both working at Basecamp at the time. He's since left the company, so he's not there anymore.
Okay.
And then we also have a third person, Dan Kim, who works on our Android app, and he's an Android programmer at Basecamp.
That's
So we're all
awesome.
like Basecamp, either current employees or alumni, and
Yeah.
just do this for fun on the side.
That is awesome. It's a very cool side project.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, yeah, let's tell whoever's watching a little background about what the app is. Hopefully, maybe you can get some more downloads from it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Um, so we in 2014, Trevor and I are both like web people, and we've been working on Rails apps and websites and things like that for years. And around that time, I didn't really pan out the way that it seemed like it might. There was sort of this fear in the web community that like native apps were going to eat the web at
Yeah, I
that
remember
time, and
that.
I think that was kind of disproven. Like it seemed
Yeah.
like maybe that's not going to happen, but it was sort of a moment where it was like, maybe we ought to know more about this native app thing, like just get some experience with it. So we were both kind of hungry to do it, but there was no position for us at Basecamp to work on that because we already had a native app team, and we don't need that many people on that team. And it
Yeah.
wasn't going to happen. So we were like, why don't we, make an app on the side? We'll just like goof around and make a thing. And we had both been complaining about the weather apps that were available at the time, which is hilarious because there's like literally 10,000 of them. I mean, it's like everybody makes one, and
Uh,
but they're all terrible. It was like,
yeah.
why is this hard? Like it seemed like it wouldn't be hard to do better than the ones that we
Yeah.
tried. So we're like, why don't we just do that? We'll just make a weather app we actually like that just shows you the damn forecast straight up. It's like no messing around.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the philosophy for it to begin with. It's just like, let's do a clean, readable, very straightforward forecast weather app all on one page that like you can just load up and read and be done and not have to like fuss around with like gimmicks and
Yeah.
things. Um, so that's kind of how it started. And then we began by making a web version of it first
I
because
didn't
we
know
didn't know how to
that.
do yeah, so because we didn't know how to do native programming and we were lazy. So,
It's your
so
proof
we
of
were like, why don't
concept.
we? Yeah, totally. So we're just like, why don't we do what we know how to do and test out if we even have an idea? Because if we don't have an idea, we won't continue wasting our time on this. Um, so we sort of like prototyped a bunch of things for a long time, for like a year, just in like a web view, and had it like, you can do that like on an iPhone still. You can like
Yeah.
load a web app on as like a home screen icon. We basically use that
Yeah.
for and at some point we liked it enough that we were using it. And it was like, well, okay, wait, this is bad, like implementation wise, but we're using it, so it must be at least good enough. Right? So then we finally decided to make a native app and then spent another like a year doing that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I a few comments that I had that I was thinking of also just talking with you about your project is I love the fact that there was 10,000 weather apps and they did all suck. They still do, and
Yeah.
yours is definitely because it's very clean. Also, and being from the Midwest or the Chicago area, the weather can it's important because it can suck. It can suck really
Right.
bad. So you check it a
Yeah.
lot. So it's not something you use once a week. You literally, I mean, at least for me, I use your app every morning or, and then I see what the hourly is. Like, all right, it's gonna, today, for example, is gonna turn shitty soon. But
Right.
it
It's
was a
gonna
really
drop
nice
and get
morning.
cold and
Yeah.
yeah,
And your
totally.
app shows you that. And it's really great and easy to see. So,
Yeah, yeah, we did a lot of iterating on the design through real world experience, which was I think why it turned out well, was that we did
Yeah.
spend that year like fight, because part of the other thing was like we didn't know anything about the weather either. So we were like entering into two domains we knew nothing about. It's like I don't know anything about meteorology or weather forecasting or anything. I also don't know how to make an iOS app. So we had to like spend a lot of time kind of learning and figuring out like what data is available and how do you show it and how do you do it in a way that's understandable, and then we would like you're saying in Chicago, the weather's just a mess constantly.
Yeah.
So you encounter all these like bizarre situations. Like one day the wind is 75 miles an hour, but like the app didn't show that. And you're like, dude, you should know like, about the wind. So we started just like checking off more and more different scenarios until we pretty much covered most of them, I think.
That's awesome. It was a lot. That's a really interesting way to do a project. And I think it's a smart way. You know, you don't have to throw it out there right away and get feedback. You can be the feedback providers by yourselves for a while. And
yeah, I think the thing with the weather apps, like the reason there's so many of them, is that they're like an attractive visual design problem. Like lots of people think like, oh, I have a clever idea for like a visual display of weather data.
Yeah.
And designers always need like something to show, right? So like, just give me stuff and I'll make it look beautiful. So there's lots of apps that do that and like do a great job looking nice, but don't do much functionally. Like it's like if you actually try to use them day to day to like figure out if you're gonna get blown over, they don't. It's not gonna help.
Yeah, it's totally true. Go to Dribble and just type in weather, and it's like 1 million results.
Totally, yeah. And like most of those wouldn't even be viable apps.
I know.
You couldn't build them because they're not anything.
Yeah.
So we took the opposite tactic, which is like, let's make a thing that's functional and like works, and then figure out like the best display.
I love that. Let's I'm trying to dig into the details a little bit. So so you did create a web app, but what was your initial design process like for it then? Was it a group effort, or did you sort of be the lead designer on it and just kind of take that on yourself?
Yeah, I remember we had like an idea for the philosophy of the app, that it would be, you know, all the forecast information on one page, so you wouldn't have to like scroll around to different like detail views to get stuff. But we didn't have much in the way of like design direction at the beginning, and so I think there was some project I did a long time before this that was like I used to be into like data visualization stuff, so I spent some time and like mocked up this idea I had a long time ago about showing like temperatures and precipitation along like the same axis as like mirrored data points. And so I kind of had that like in the back of my head, and I was like, why don't I fiddle with that idea? Like maybe I can that pattern. So I think I sketched a few things like on my iPad. I just like goofed around and came up with an idea, which was originally like a line graph, and then eventually we switched to like a bar chart format.
Yeah.
Like better. But like, so I think I sketched like the mirrored, where it's like temperatures on one side and precipitation on the other side, with like data in the middle. And that was like really early. Like I think like the first week we started working on it.
That's
and
crazy.
I kind of held up. Like, it was like we had that little
still
idea.
there.
Yeah, it morphed into a bunch of other things. But that's just still sort of the core of the app. It's just that basic like chart.
That's awesome. Very cool. So you created this sort of I don't want to say MVP, but essentially it was MVP. Then it became an iOS app, and like you said, you keep iterating on it. So what has been your process to creating these new additions? And I know you said you also have some new stuff that's in the works. Maybe you can talk about how that all came about and how you and your team sort of generate and make updates and figure out how to do new things.
Yeah, it's funny how that panned out. So the first version of the app that we launched was really not a very good app. I mean, it was just like, candidly, it was fairly terrible. It was like a web view that didn't do much and had like a locations picker, I think. And
that's awesome.
There wasn't much else in there. And it was bad enough that we were like, we'll just make this thing free, because like we don't feel good even charging anyone. So that's kind of where it started. It started very humble, and like we built up. Even with the bad version, we got some nice like reviews, and a few people like Macworld, I think, discovered it kind of early and like featured us in a little review thing.
That's
so
awesome.
We got like enough people using it that we felt like it warranted more effort. Like it's like, if we're gonna have a few thousand people running this, we should iterate on it and make it not a thing that we're sort of like embarrassed about. So So part of that process was like we had to get better at doing native app development, and we still sort of feel like novices at it, like 'cause we don't do it as like our main job. So
Yeah.
it's like you kind of come to it like in the evening, you like poke around, and like, it's hard to get like a solid block of time to like get really
Yeah.
better. But we've been doing this for enough years that we've sort of continually gotten better and better. Now we feel like we're like close to professional quality. So, but so I think pretty much the app just continued to evolve as we've discovered new weather forecast scenarios that we hadn't addressed, or new design ideas that we wanted to try, or we get tons of customer feedback about it, like just an unbelievable amount of people write us in, they'll write emails and tweets and all kinds of stuff suggesting ideas, and they'll like point out a bug, and so a lot of the work has been just like fixing every imaginable scenario. Like if it's -52 in the Arctic, there's some guy in the Arctic who's like, hey, this looks bad, it's -52. And we're like, all right, we'll fix it. So there's been a lot of that. And then Apple also continues to iterate their product. And as a native app designer, you kind of have to keep up with what they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
If you want it to stay relevant. So like every year or so, they announce a new iOS, and then typically they bundle in, 2 or 3 new features with that, or they'll do Apple Watch or whatever is like the new thing. And then if you can sort of get into their system and like do what they're pushing that year, they'll feature you on the App Store, and like they've been like really supportive of us and put us in lots of cool places.
That's awesome.
So it's like kind of a combination of just like we're still into it, we still like working on it, it's fun, we're learning a lot still, and then there's more to do. There's always more to do.
So when it comes to building new features and designing new things, do you primarily just work in Xcode, or do you do work outside, like in a design tool, and then bring it in? It sounds like you do some Xcode too, which is interesting.
I do a lot of the UI in Xcode.
Nice.
At this point, I think I do most of it, actually.
Yeah.
There was a while where like I would do some, and then Trevor would kind of come around and fix it, but then his time has been really tight lately, so I've had to just sort of get better at it, and then kind of muscled through and got better at it. So I mostly work in Xcode, but it's still a hybrid app. We still use a web view.
Okay.
So I'm doing some stuff like in Rails and HTML and CSS, and then some stuff directly in Xcode. And then weather app is pretty visual, so I'm doing a lot of visual stuff in Sketch. And, generating lots of assets. Like we have an icon picker. There's like 20 icons, and each one of those icons has to have like 20 variants. So there's like 400 variants. So there's lots of that kind of stuff where you're just cutting lots of little details and icons and things like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that was the main hit of Sketch, was allowing people to export all of these different assets easily within that little pane in the corner, because that was such a pain in the ass for a long time.
I don't know how I would do it without it. I have a little plugin that like will kick out all the versions that you need, because there's so many, and it would just take forever to do manually. So
I haven't done iOS design, like product, since probably 2 years, maybe 3 years now, maybe 2 years, I don't know. But yeah, so much has changed. Like I didn't have to deal with the new X, form factor and watches and all that stuff, and so
the iPhone 10 was actually really great for us, because we were sort of excited about it. It seemed cool. We'd all been like kind of waiting for that form factor for a long time, so we decided to try to meet the release date of that phone with like a major redesign of the app. I think we had like 2 months or something of a lead time between when they announced it and when we needed the update to be done. And we got it done like that week.
That's
awesome. Barely got it done. I did like a full redesign that sort of like used the space more nicely and everything. And then Apple really liked that. They like it when you do something new that coincides with what they're doing. So that helped us again to kind of boost us a little bit.
That is awesome. Cool. Maybe we could talk more broadly now just about how you design in general. One of the things that I'm going to do is layer in some images of stuff that we're talking about, so people could see the app and maybe see some of the stuff that you had. I was like showing sketches and the app, and maybe the original idea you had. I also love seeing Xcode. Like you can do Xcode. Like
totally.
You know, it's cool.
Yeah, we have a blog post up. I just moved our blog over to our main website.
Oh, nice.
And there's a if you scroll back to the very first post, there's a post that has like a long description of kind of the early iterations, and I think there's a picture of that original sketch if you want to see that.
Perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
I think that stuff's interesting and motivating too. Um, cool. I'm curious just for myself, what are the new updates you're working on?
So we kind of got ourselves into a little bit of a trouble where we have a lot of stuff going simultaneously, and so it's been like 4 months since we've released an update, and everybody's like freaking out. We're getting all these emails like, "Are you dead? Are you closing the app? What's happening?" Because
That's
we're
funny.
not normally that quiet for that long.
Yeah.
But for at least the last 2 years, we've been getting bombarded with requests for an Apple Watch app.
Oh yeah, I remember telling you on Twitter too.
Yeah, and it's funny because like at first Trevor and I were like not into the watch like at all, so
Yeah.
we just kind of just like
Yeah.
not into it. And then finally I was like, all right, we're getting enough emails. I should at least give this thing a shot to see like do we
Yeah.
want to do this thing. And so I started wearing the watch, and I tried it a couple different times, like didn't take. And then finally I kind of got into it and realized like, oh, okay, like this is what it's for. Here's what it's good at. Here's what it's bad
Yeah.
at. And then finally, I kind of thought like, okay, now I have an idea. Like I've been using other weather apps on this thing, and I'm back in that same situation where like I hate them. Like I don't want that to be the case. So I started making a watch app, and then in the meantime, Trevor had been working on rebuilding our widget. We have like a
Yeah.
today screen widget, which is like a little bit flaky. It's like it's never really worked all that well. So we were kind of like rebuilding that from the ground up. And then in the meantime, also Dan has been working on some like Android app updates. So we have like all these things in flight at once, and we're kind of just like blocked on time. So it's like
Yeah.
we're basically gonna do like one massive release of like all this stuff at once, but it needs to all get done. So it's still a little bit ways out, but we're getting close.
That's awesome. I'm
Normally we
excited.
bundle that together because it's like too many things and it
Yeah.
stalls out. But yeah,
I'm excited because I do not like the weather apps. I was hoping that the new Apple Watch with the more space would have better room for weather stuff, and I think they're getting a little better. I feel like
yeah,
they're stealing your very simple layout of the weather, and then here's what it's going to be throughout the day. I noticed
right.
one of the watches. I was like, "Ooh, burn."
Yeah, we've seen there's over the years the weather apps have sort of gravitated more towards that design. Like
Yeah,
Dark Sky did a redesign that's sort of
yeah, I
like
saw
ours,
that.
which is fine. I mean, it's kind of cool. Like it's like
Yeah, it's
uh,
interesting because I remember when Dark Sky came out, everyone was excited because it was different. It looked really funky too, like the way they visualized like the precipitation was different. I remember that and
right.
like the
I
weather.
still really loved their original
Yeah,
design.
it was very simple. I remember Yahoo had a really good simple design that they I think took off the market or something,
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
was very early. I think it was early iPhone. Anyways, actually, I'm gonna ask you some questions about just general design questions, but not right now because I have more. I'm actually really interested in hearing about um, how it is to run like an app sort of project. Like you could essentially call this a company.
Yeah.
So how do you run an app company? I mean, I'm sure lots and lots and lots of people want to do what you're doing. Like everyone has an app idea. I think maybe I don't know. I don't. I feel like I don't talk to as many people as I used to. But I mean, I think you remember even like 5 years ago, everyone had an app idea.
It's
So
still the case. I
yeah,
mean, people are
okay.
constantly coming out to me being like, "Hey, I have an idea for an app." I'm like, okay,
You're
I know,
like,
I know you do.
can you work really hard and make it yourself?
Right? Yeah, please do it. Go ahead. Um, yeah, it is. It's like a full business. There's no way to do an app that is not like an entire business unto itself. Like if
Yeah.
you're going to do an app, you also are now running a company, more or less.
Yeah.
And it could be like a shoestring company. Like we're fairly little, um, but you have to, report tax income. Like if you're going to sell the thing, you get income. You have to have somewhere to put that. You put it in a bank, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to report that to the government. You have to file as a company. You have to certify yourself with Apple and meet all these requirements about like, are you legal and what territories are you allowed to sell in, and like it's a big thing. Like it's like a significant undertaking just to even get the app in a store.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's a big thing. And then on top of that, you've got like you have to tell people the app exists and market it and do like the app store listings and ads and things like that. And you also have to decide like what's the business model. Are you going to give it away? Are you going to charge, $3? Are you going to do a subscription? Like there's like
Yeah.
all these different choices. So that whole side of it is almost like a project in itself. Like it's like just that stuff.
Yeah. It's I'm having flashbacks from when I worked on it, and had a head start because the company I worked for already had an app out earlier, so they basically had a template that we just had to work on top of. So I didn't have to
Right.
go through from the very beginning.
Yep.
Um, have you had any contact with Apple? Have they ever reached out to talk about your app or wanted to meet you or anything?
No, so when we started, there was no way really to get in touch with Apple. Um, the App Store like feature selection process was very just like invisible and secret, and you kind of just hoped they would notice you. And then a couple of years ago, they opened up a little like contact form where you can sort of give the editorial team at the App Store a heads up. Like if you're doing something interesting, you can reach out and say like, hey, we're doing this new app, we're doing this update, and here's what's going to be in it, and we'd love it if you guys would take a look at it. And so they, at some point, I can't remember. I think I filled that out, and then they reached out to us and offered to have the app be featured. And when they do that, they give you like a really short deadline. It's like 5 days or something, and you have to supply all these marketing assets to them that meet these like extraordinarily specific requirements about sizing, and like there's grids and you have to fit all of your logos and everything in there. And there's only certain things you can include. It's like a whole system. So I think I spent the better part of a week trying to get that done. And then we got featured and it was great. So
Yeah.
that's the only time they've really reached out, but it's like it's not really person to person. It's just
Yeah.
like you kind of get a machine notification. Hey, Apple wants to feature you. Please submit your stuff in 5 days.
I really miss working on native mobile because it's different than than working on the web, and I think it's just so fun.
Yeah, it has a special sort of feel to it that you don't get on the web.
Yeah.
There's something cool about it. I still haven't really put my finger on what it is.
I know. I totally agree, though. Cool. My next questions are around just your design process, I guess. And I know it's different, like I said, and we talked about it earlier. It tends to be different, but between what type of project you're on. But I don't know, just in general, like maybe what your thoughts are, or you can even give a few if you want.
Yeah.
But so my first question about sort of your design, I don't know, process, I guess. Yeah, your design process is, how do you start the design phase? Like how does that part start for you?
It varies a little bit depending on what we're doing. Um, in general, I think the process that I follow is sort of similar to the 37 Signals Basecamp process that we've written about in books and stuff, which the main point is to make something real as soon as you possibly can so you can understand more about what you're making. Because I find that the longer you stay in like a hypothetical mock-up kind of scenario, the slower it will be that you make progress to something that's like shippable. So that's partly why I like working in like bare metal tools. Like I work directly in Rails, I work directly in Xcode. Like it's the shortest amount of work to go from an idea to a working thing without something in the middle.
Yeah.
But there are times when you can't, which is like you have a new app idea and it's totally raw and you don't have the resources to be able to build it immediately and start fiddling around for a year. Or you have a few different ideas that aren't fully formed and you feel like you need to sort of see them and experiment a little bit before you're ready to get down to details and build some stuff. So those are the times when I'll spend more time prototyping, either with like static mock-ups, or I'll draw stuff in Sketch, or I might draw stuff on my iPad, or just whatever's available.
Yeah.
And then basically once you build up enough confidence to say like, okay, I've been through a few iterations on this and I feel like I have a sense of it, then you can start getting into the implementation. But in general, it's like get something building as quickly as I can.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I say that's awesome way too much. So after editing my videos, I'm like, that's awesome sucks. Okay.
There's always something that you say all the time.
Yeah, like whammy. I don't know. I gotta find something better.
Booyah.
I'm just gonna go like, interesting.
It's like, oh, good.
Okay, so I my next question is, and this kind of digs in a little deeper about maybe what you said secondarily, and you kind of talked about it, but so what does your wireframing process look like? I imagine that's what you would be referring to as sketching. Um, maybe
Yeah.
not, but
I don't really do like formal wireframing in the traditional sense. Um, I have done that in the past when I was doing more like client centric work, where in those cases, a lot of times clients want to have a reasonable understanding of what they're paying for in advance of paying for the whole thing. And so those were cases where I would like do a wireframe or maybe like a higher fidelity mock-up as like a deliverable to sort of convince someone, here's the plan, here's the information architecture for this website we're going to make. Here's where all your things are going to go. We haven't fleshed it out completely yet, but like this is the idea. In my current line of work, there's nobody I really have to convince other than either myself or people at my company. Um, and so we can kind of do that in a more low fidelity way, even with just like a broad marker sketch or a few screens stitched together kind of roughly without having everything sorted out to the degree of a wireframe. So I haven't really done real like full tilt wireframing in a while, but what we do is sort of a variation on that. You can kind of see it behind me.
oh yeah,
That's sort of our like low fidelity
yeah,
wireframing, right? We're sort of just sketch it out. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
And that the reason is, I imagine, because you've worked on the same products for, you built, I mean, if I've just, I don't know if this is, or say this is Basecamp 3, you helped design it from the beginning, and pretty much the entire team that's worked to create it would sort of know, if you made one of these sketches, kind of know what you're talking about, like visually and probably the information and all that.
Yeah, the sketches are like the ones behind me are more about communicating the like root of an idea without getting into the weeds on like the actual final
Yeah.
visuals of it. So it's like we have an idea for a screen and we think it's going to have two buttons here, and when you click one of these it's going to do this, and then there's going to be some text in this area or whatever. We can sketch that out literally in 3 seconds and have like sort of a sense of it without really knowing what it's really going to look like, but at least we've communicated like this is the concept. And then one of us, a designer, can take that like rough concept idea and go bring it to either to a prototype phase or to a real like HTML, CSS kind of thing, and build something out pretty quickly. So like within a day, we can go from that like rough chalkboard sketch to like a screen that's not done, but like you can look at it and start to iterate and make assessments on it. So,
That's awesome. Cool.
yeah.
So, because of your process, I feel like a lot of these questions don't really make sense. I don't really want to ask them. So, I'm not going to say that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's kind of awesome.
It is kind of awesome. It's interesting because I worked the same way at Threadless after a while, where we had whiteboards instead of chalkboards, but it would pretty much be that because I was communicating with sort of the stakeholders, of the company for the product, and the product is pretty mature. So it's like, we want to add this new thing. We already know what everything else looks like, so it can't look drastically different than that. And we just need these functionalities, and this should do this, and this is the flow. And so I get it.
Yeah, it really depends on what you're making too. Like when we were redesigning Hello Weather for the iPhone 10, that was a case where I did a bunch of fake like sketch mock-ups because we weren't sure if we had a good enough idea to justify spending a bunch of time doing a redesign. So I kind of wanted to see like what would this screen look like if we took all the ideas we have now and built that on top of what we already have. And like at the end, is it going to look like something we care enough about to spend the next 2 months building or not? And that's the kind of thing I think you need to do periodically. But if you're, building a small feature or a single screen in a flow or whatever. Those tend to be things that are easier to just sort of communicate with these like chalkboard sketches.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so you did touch on this earlier, but maybe we can just talk about it again. And this may be more broad in general about your general experiences with feedback. And how do you know, like, when you're creating something new, how do you know you're on the right track?
Right. It's difficult. So one way is to have sort of done your research in advance of the work, so that by the time you're doing the work, you're confident in it because you have enough information up front that you believe you are right about. Um, that's generally what we try to do at Basecamp, is that we try not to embark on projects that aren't, they're maybe not defined well enough or still fuzzy enough that we don't have the confidence that we can like launch this thing and feel like, okay, yeah, we nailed that. So part of that is doing a lot of background work in advance of assigning design teams to projects, of talking to customers and using the product ourselves and sort of poking holes in what works and what doesn't, and why people buy this thing and why people leave this thing, and all that kind of like background knowledge keeps accruing, and you get feedback from customers, and you can kind of assimilate all of that into ideas and small projects to address
Yeah.
little things. So I think that's our usual approach. Now, if you're starting something completely new, like when we were starting the weather app and had no idea, there's really no way to do a lot of
Yeah.
upfront research. If you're like new to the field, you don't have any customers, you don't have any people to talk to really about it. Which is why in that case we spent a lot of time iterating and using the thing ourselves to learn the domain. And then at that point, then you're sort of back in the safer scenario where now you've used it and you have some knowledge and you can keep iterating. So
Yeah, that's really awesome. I like that. That's good feedback. I actually was so my last question. I think I'm gonna skip because we talked about it. But my
okay.
what I am curious about now, and maybe we could spend a little more time about this, a little more time on this, is if I don't really know how to put it, but I personally, and I'm not sure of your education background in design, but like I went to school for traditional graphic design. It was called visual communication.
Yeah.
I sort of learned to do product design just by working, and my knowledge as a graphic designer and a web designer. Remember webmasters?
Yeah, I want one.
That's
Totally.
awesome. That should be the name of the series. The webmasters.
Past masters, yeah.
Yeah, past masters. It's amazing. But so much has changed, and I even remember trying to get something called a product design job before I was working at Threadless, and I really didn't even know what that meant, but it sounded cool.
Yeah,
And now,
totally.
like, that's what I've morphed into. So, long way to get around to the question, but what advice do you give to people who are trying to get into, I guess what you do and what I used to do or what I do? More about you.
Yeah. Um, so I took an extraordinarily roundabout way into product design, which I think is in part, you and I are, I think, kind of close in age. And I think part of the reason it took us to go weird ways was that the field had not really been properly defined when we were coming up.
Yeah, it's true.
Um, like, I didn't know really that product design was even a job I could get until I was already out of college. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like there was software and there were like web products and everything at that time, but I just didn't like see that as a job for some reason. And I don't know if
Yeah.
it's just like I didn't know or what. Um, so for me, I did a bunch of stuff prior to this. I started kind of in journalism and doing writing, and then I got a degree in computer science, and then I went to graduate school and got an MFA in new media, which is a weird. I don't think it's really new anymore. It's just media
Remember
now.
that? New
Yeah,
media.
new media. That was
The
my focus.
internet. Ooh.
Yeah, which I'm pretty sure it's still a thing, but maybe they don't call
Yeah.
it that anymore. And that was really cool. I was the first student in a program for that they'd ever had,
Wow.
which is neat. Or maybe the second student. I don't know. We were like the first graduating class, and so So I did that, and then did a lot of like web design, webmastery jobs for a few years, and then eventually found my way into doing apps, and sort of then got the bug and realized like, oh, actually, what I wanted to do all along was make software, and I didn't realize that. Like I've been doing things sort of around software for a decade, and then discovered, oh, actually, software is a thing.
Yeah.
But now I feel like it's more. Uh, Maybe it's not. I feel like it's a little bit more obvious that like that's a profession. Like with the App Store being as popular as it is, and like everybody having software on them constantly. Um, I assume I haven't talked to young people about this in a while, but I think maybe it's more clear that like you can go down that road. But I still don't know what the track is. Like I don't know how you go from high school and college into like a product design field because there isn't, as far as I know, you can't like major in software design. It's like
Yeah.
not a thing.
Oh, that's true.
So it's still tricky. I think you have to do like tangential education and come out and then still sort of like work your way into it and like learn and just build stuff on your own.
Yeah.
Or like, I guess there's like boot camps now. Maybe people do boot camps, but um, I don't know. I feel like it's a hard field to break into
Definitely.
because there's so much. It's like you need to know programming and visual design and information design and writing. You need to be a really good writer. You also have to keep up with like shifting technology, which is difficult on its own. So that was just like really a lot of things.
Yeah. That's awesome. I feel like we followed a similar path where I never even considered designing software. I didn't know that anyone did that. It didn't look like anyone used to do it.
Right.
Everything kind of looked terrible. And I just never thought about fixing it. And then I was sort of introduced to it through what people would call like, I don't remember. I think they would just say like you're a UX UI designer. That's what it was called. Like,
Right.
but basically you're in charge of fixing this entire product. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's just what I don't know. Yeah, and then people are like, it's a product designer. I'm like, I thought they made like bikes and
Right.
like OXO
Yeah. It
and
was like
stuff.
product designers are like industrial designers.
Yeah,
That was what I always thought.
I think that's what they still think too,
Right.
because they
Yeah.
are.
Physical products.
Yeah,
Right.
that's really interesting. So I think this will be my last question, so I can let you get back. But we talked about it's hard to break into the scene. Do you have any advice for ways that could help?
Yeah. I think the main thing is just producing work that you care about, whether someone tells you to do it or not. I feel like that's the one thread. If I trace back my entire career, the things that have like progressed me to the next level were always sort of things that I was doing outside of what my job at the time had been. So for a while, I was doing like network administration, and I was like a webmaster for a little school at the college, and those were like fine jobs to do, and I was getting paid, but it wasn't like fulfilling my creative itch. So I was doing websites on the side, and I was experimenting with little projects on my own and putting that out there and writing blog posts that nobody was reading, just doing stuff. And I still do now. I mean, like I could very easily just work at Basecamp and take home my salary and be fine with that. But I still sort of have this nagging, possibly annoying, possibly personality flaw thing where I just need to be doing something that's my own, that I kind of own, and get to like play around and do experimental stuff that's outside of what somebody else told me to do. So I think that's my one point of advice, is just like if you're trying to get to product design, or you're trying to do software or whatever it is, just like keep poking at it as much as you can, and you'll get there. You'll get there eventually. It can take a while.
That's great advice. It's very true. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Awesome. Sure thing.
All right. See ya.
See you.